Hey y'all, I'm back on here to tell you another story. It's story time. Today I'm gonna tell you a story about a man named Lazarus. Okay, Lazarus was a man who was a friend of Jesus, and he fell sick, and this sickness was really bad. But Jesus wasn't around, so Lazarus' sisters sent some servants to some people, some friends of theirs, basically, to go get Jesus and tell it and bring him to Lazarus so that Jesus can help Lazarus, because they knew that Jesus was able to do things that nobody else could do. So they went and told Jesus, and they reported to him. They said Lazarus was sick. And so Jesus found out, it had been like a couple of days since they had left home, basically. So Jesus told the disciples, hey, Lazarus is sick, and I'm glad that I was not there because, basically, Jesus knew that nothing could die around him, basically, because he's the life. When he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus is the life. So nothing could actually die while he was around Jesus. So Jesus was like, hey, I'm glad that for your sake, talking to the apostles, that, I was not there. So basically, he stayed in the same place where he was at for a couple of more days. Now, he said, this sickness is not unto death, is what Jesus said. This sickness is not unto death. But he waited in the same place that he was for a couple of more days. Then he said, now I'm going to go and wake Lazarus. And everybody said, well, no, if Lazarus is sleeping, then maybe, he's doing good then. It's a good thing he's sleeping because, when you sleep, you don't really feel the pain and stuff while you sleep. It's just when you wake up, you start feeling stuff. And so basically, the apostles were like, no, he's doing good if he sleep, And so Jesus had to tell them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and I'm going to wake him up. So they begin to head toward the place where Lazarus was, toward his house and his sister's houses, Lazarus and his sister's place. And he came to the edge of town, and let's see here. His sister's name was Mary and Martha. Okay. Martha come running out to him and said, Lord, my Lord, if you if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask for. And he said, don't worry, your brother will live again. And she's like, yeah, I know he's going to live again. He's going to rise again in the resurrection of the last day. And Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Okay, he said, Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Basically what Jesus is saying is, he don't have to wait until the last day. I'm here. I'm already here right now. Okay, so, she ran back and he said, if you believe, you'll see the glory of God. If you believe, you will see the glory of God. This is the reason why a lot of people do not see miracles happening in today's time, because a lot of people don't believe that Jesus can do some of the stuff. Well, they do believe he can do the stuff he can do, but a lot of them don't believe that he'll do it for them. Okay, some of them don't believe that he does it anymore. So you got a lot of people who have disbelief, and some people think death is just too hard, for you to raise the dead or, bring somebody back from the dead. Some people just think it's just too hard. So they kind of give up when people die. Like you can have a loved one in the hospital or something and be praying for them. And then, praying that they won't die and what have you. But then as soon as they die, you stop praying. When in actuality, we have power to raise the dead. If we will work with Jesus, we have power to raise the dead. But most of us don't believe we have that power. So we stop praying because we feel like we've already lost the battle. And then some of us get angry and blame God for it and say, he took my loved one or what have you, stuff like that. But anyway, or they say, well, he allowed it to happen. He let it happen, But actually, we're the ones who's letting it happen, because if you have power to raise the dead, and you let them die and you just leave them dead, it's on you. It's like you have power, you didn't do anything about it. So it's kind of hard to blame God for that. Okay, back to the story. So he said, if you believe, you'll be able to see, you will see the glory of God. So she went and told her sister Mary. Okay, Mary's in the house with all the mourners. They busy crying because, you know, for in their culture they cry for like at least a week or so to mourn their loved ones when they're lost, basically. And so she's in the house with the mourners. The mourners come in, they crying and carrying on and you know, trying to help Mary mourn. Basically, so Mary got up and she heard that Jesus was out there at the edge of the city, so she got out and she ran up her and said the same thing her sister said. If you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Okay, so now, even though Jesus said this sickness is not unto death, Lazarus died. Okay, so you got to pay attention to this story of how it's going. Okay, so sometimes, you know, even though people be praying, sometimes people still die. But anyway, Mary came out. If you had been there, you know, Jesus, you know, my brother wouldn't have died. Basically, it's kind of like she's blaming Jesus, like it's your fault he died, which is kind of like what we do in these days. You know, we kind of blame it on the Lord. But anyway, so, you know, Jesus is like, where have you laid him? Now she was busy crying. All the mourners was like, oh, she's going to cry at the grave site. So they all came with her crying and carrying on. And because of what looked like unbelief, basically, because a couple of them was saying, do you think Jesus could actually raise him from the dead? You think if he had been here, he wouldn't have died? Do you think he could really do it? You know? And so Jesus he said, where have you laid him? So they took him to the gravesite. They went to the gravesite. And Jesus wept because the people was, the mourners, everybody was just crying so much. And it was like they didn't believe this could happen. And this is the reason why Jesus wept. They thought that he was crying because he loved Lazarus so much. He did love Lazarus. That is true. But if you don't believe, you can't see the glory of God. You have to believe. Okay? So what if you're praying for somebody who does not have faith? That means you need to have faith. Okay? You can use your faith to heal somebody or deliver somebody or raise the dead or heal the sick or cast out devils or cleanse the leper, you know, heal the maimed, the halt, the lame, the paralytic. You know, it's up to you to use your faith if they don't have any faith. Okay? So Jesus looks up and he starts talking to God. And he said, Father, I know you hear me. You always hear me. I know. He said, but I'm just saying it's because of these people around me. In other words, I can't use their faith, so I'm going to use mine. He said, I'm just saying this so the people around me will know that you sent me. And then he says, now notice he didn't say, God, I ask you to heal these, not heal. I ask you to raise Lazarus from the dead. Lord, get him up, raise him up from the dead. That's not how he prayed. Okay? He just said, I know you always hear me. I'm just saying this so that they'll know that you sent me. Then he turned to Lazarus and said, Lazarus, come forth, which means come out. Okay? Now, this is one of the secrets to prayer. Okay? When you pray, you don't ask God to do it for you. You don't ask God to do it. You speak to whatever that problem is, and you tell it what you want it to do. Okay? Lazarus, come out. Lazarus, come forth. Okay? And first he said, roll the stone away. They was like, by now he stinketh. So he's been in the grave 4 days now. So see, God is not limited by time. So he's not worried about the 4 days. He's been in the grave for 4 days. What's that got to do with it? I am the resurrection and the life. You know what I'm saying? So we are expecting God to come and resurrect everybody in the resurrection of the last day. So if God can raise you up in the resurrection of the last day, which can be thousands of years away, what makes you think he can't raise them in 4 days? We have to pay attention to the stories. God is letting us know we have power here on the earth. Okay? So anyway, so, you know, they rolled a stone away, and Jesus tells Lazarus to come out. And they all stand there looking to see what's going to happen. And then Lazarus comes out of the grave. Okay? Now, because some of the people don't believe, they probably thinking, yeah, this is a trick. That's not really him, because he was still bound with his grave clothes on. And, they've had that napkin over your face, so you can't really tell it's Lazarus, You just see somebody bound up in grave clothes thinking, yeah, okay. I'm not sure that's really him. That's the way people who had doubt would probably feel. And so Jesus brings them in on the miracle, and he says, loose him and let him go. And so they have to go and take the grave clothes off of him. So they pulled that napkin off his face, and they seen it was really him. Some of the people just broke out running, because you know how black people are, They ain't gonna be standing there all calm, cool, collected like everything's cool. They see somebody dead come back alive, they're gonna be screaming and hollering. But anyway, some people ran back to the scribes and Pharisees and told them what had happened. And then, it's kind of unbelievable when you hear, somebody get raised from the dead. Some people be like, oh, wow, that's awesome, got raised from the dead. Other people be like, yeah, right, y'all, that's a trick. Some people just wouldn't believe it. So they ran back and told what happened. The scribes and Pharisees began to plan. They said, we got to figure out a way that we can not only kill Jesus, we need to figure out a way to kill him and Lazarus. Because when God does infallible, when he does miracles that has infallible proofs, they had to come and see if this was true. So they came, and Jesus and them, they went back and had dinner. You know how you have dinner after the funeral and everything. But this wasn't the funeral, though. This is 4 days later. So they went over to Lazarus' house, they had dinner. They over there eating and everything. And, some of the scribes and Pharisees come over to see what's going on. Now, here's Lazarus sitting right there at the table. Jesus ain't got to say, yeah, it's true that I raised Lazarus. He ain't got to say nothing. Proof is right there. It's called infallible proofs. If your grandmama goes to church with one leg and comes back with 2 legs, infallible proofs. You can't, the preacher ain't got to say, well, yeah, her leg grew. He ain't got to say nothing. Whoever did the healing ain't got to say nothing. There's infallible proof right there in your face. There's nothing you can say. You can't say it didn't happen. Well, I mean, you could, but you'd be lying, because the proof is right there in your face. These are the kind of miracles that Jesus was able to do. Now he's then giving us power so that we can do the same thing. And most of us don't even believe we have the power. Therefore, we never try to use it because we don't believe we have the power. But if you look in the scriptures, there's a scripture that says, behold, I give unto you power to tread over all the power of the enemy. Okay, over the serpent. Talking about Satan. You got more power. You got enough power to tread over everything the devil's trying to do in this earth. It's just, we need to learn to use this power. But anyway, so Lazarus is alive. Lazarus ain't got to say nothing. Jesus ain't got to say nothing. He's healed. He's made whole. And he's not sick. And he's not dead. He's back at home, got his clothes on. He's eating dinner with Jesus. All right? And his sisters. Everybody is back happy again because Lazarus is alive again. But you got to pay attention to the infallible proofs in the Bible. There's a lot of things that happen that have infallible proofs. And the same kind of things can happen in today's time if you will use your faith. Because Jesus said, if you believe, you will see the glory of God. Pay attention to that. God bless you. And I'll see y'all next time. All right. God bless. Love y'all. Bye.